Hope you are doing well. Today, horror incident about Skinwalker. It's the story of 23-year-old Navajo man. The way the Indians do is to dry their corn and dig a hole beside the hogan and put it down there. Then they put a stone over it and some dirt and weeds so no one will find it. And then they take their goats and sheep back into the mountains for the winter. And when they want some corn they go to their hogan and get it. A family did that, and after a while they needed some more corn. They had a very pretty daughter and lots of men wanted to marry her. And they sent her with her little brother to get it. They both rode on one horse, and when they got there they said it was too late to go home, they would get the corn in the morning. So they went in the hogan and they were going to sleep. They had tied the two front feet of their horse and he went off to feed, but he kept coming back to the hogan and his ears were up. He could see better than they could in the dark, and the girl knew somebody was out there because in the afternoon some men had been near there. And one man said, "Now I can get that girl." And all the other men went away. And at night she saw a dark shadow in the woods. And she knew a human wolf was after her, but she didn't tell her brother. So she dug a hole under the hogan and she told her little brother to get into it, and if anyone came he was to crawl outside and ride fast to their family. And she would try to fight as long as she could. And she tied the blanket over the door as much as she could so it would take the wolf a long time to get in and the boy could get away. Then later in the night she heard some mud fall off the top of the hogan and she knew the wolf had come. And the boy crawled out and he cut the rope around the horse's feet and he jumped on the horse, and the horse was scared. He didn't want to stay there and the boy didn't need to whip him or hold the reins. He ran as fast as he could, and the boy held onto his mane. Then the wolf came in, and she fought him as hard as she could. Pretty soon the boy got home and he told his family, and his father and mother got on their horses and they rode as fast as they could back to the sister. Her big brother was not at home. He had made a long bow and lots of fine arrows with eagle feathers on them, and he could sure shoot. He went out hunting that day and he stopped at a hogan for the night. Indians do that when they are away from home. That night it snowed a little, and the next morning he said, "This is a good day for hunting, I guess I will shoot some rabbits." And it was snowing and he had on some good new moccasins with heavy soles, and he had his feet in burlap sacks to keep them dry. And it was snowing. And he was a fine shot. He could hit whatever he wanted to. He saw two rabbits and he took two arrows and he shot them. He never missed. And he was riding along and he saw a big track, but the snow had covered it and he did not know whether it was a horse or a man or some animal. So he blew the snow out of the track, and then he knew it was a human wolf and there was blood, too. So he followed that track. He followed it all day and toward evening he came to the edge of a mesa, and he crawled slowly to the edge and he had one arrow in his bow and two in his mouth. At the edge he came to the last track made by that human wolf. And there was no way to get down that cliff, so he circled around and he found just one narrow path going down. He went along, and he saw a big stone lying against the cliff. And he knew that was where the human wolf was. So he pulled back the stone and went into the cave and he saw nothing, and pretty soon he came to a black curtain. He pulled that back and he went in. There was a narrow passage and he went along for half a mile and then he came to another black curtain. In a half mile he came to another, and then he came to the fourth one. He pulled that back and he found himself in a big room which was round like a hogan. And he saw lots of men and women sitting around, and they were the ones he had seen at dances, ceremonies, and around the hogans. He saw skeletons and bones and jewelry and lots of things around the walls. He thought, now they will kill me. There was a small room at the left and he went in there and he hoped they wouldn't see him. There was one big fat man, and he was chief and he was singing. And all these people, even girls and boys, were learning how to be human wolves. The big fat man said, "There is an old lady who has died about 200 miles from here, and I want 2 men to go there and dig her up and take her jewelry." So 2 men came in front of him and he sang over them, and then he said to be careful. They took their skins and went out. Then the people said, "There is a boy in there and he doesn't belong to us." So they brought him out and they put him in the middle and they wanted to kill him, and he was thinking how he could get out of there. He wanted to get their eagle feathers because that was the main thing to all this, and then everything would go wrong with them and they would have to stop. But they were all around him, and they were watching him. And up on the wall ahead of him was a girl's head, and he kept looking at it, but he didn't know it was his sister. And then the big fat man said, "Do you want to be a human wolf?" And he didn't want to, but the man said, "You can study to be a wolf or we will kill you." So he said, "I will be a wolf," and all the time he was thinking how he could get out of there. On each side of the door they had a big dog, so if he ran out they would make a noise and stop him. Then they passed some meat. He didn't want it because he knew it was human meat, but he didn't know it was his sister's. He thought he had better take some, so he took a piece and put it near his mouth, and then he put it down inside his shirt. Then he thought, "When I go out I will give a piece to those dogs and they won't make a noise." Soon the big fat man fell asleep and the boy pretended he was asleep. He snored, yet all the time he was looking around, but his eyes were almost shut. Then after a while, all of them were asleep because they knew the dogs would make a noise if he tried to go out. Then he got up and took his bow and arrows which they had taken away from him. He took the bunch of eagle feathers. He took a step toward the door, then another step, and then one dog began to growl. Then he took the meat out of his shirt and he broke it into 2 pieces, and he gave a piece of that meat to the dog. They were hungry and they wanted that meat. Then he ran through the curtain and he ran as fast as he could. They had put wood and stones behind the curtains, so he would have a hard time. But he got through 3 of them all right, and then he heard a lot of noise among those people. He sure had a hard time getting through that last curtain, and he had to push big logs and stones away. And then he ran as fast as he could. He was a fine runner. But soon he heard a wolf over there, and then over there, and then he knew they were all around him. He came to a badger's hole and he pulled up a big weed and crawled into the hole and pulled the weed down hard so it looked like it was growing there. Pretty soon the noises stopped and he pushed up the weed and he looked around and he heard someone coming. So he went down again, and that big fat man came running and he ran right over the hole. He heard him say, "I wish we had killed him like I told them to." Then after a while the boy came out and he ran home. And when he got there the sole of his moccasin was worn out and his foot was sore. In 1 or 2 nights there was a war dance near and his family went over there, but he didn't go because his foot was sore. But later he took his bow and his arrows like a cane and he thought he would walk over there. When he got there he saw that big fat man who was chief of the human wolves sitting on a big white horse. He was all dressed in fine clothes, and he had lots of bracelets and necklaces, and his wife had, too. The boy said, "I'm going to shoot that man," so he went around the circle of the wagons and people until he came behind the man. Then he put an arrow in and gave a long pull. He aimed at that big fat man's back. He shot the arrow and it went in so far that only a little bit, 1 inch, was showing. And that's the end of the story. Keep yourself and others safe from any type of scary activity. Thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe.